excited to have some great minds on the call today and wonderful folks to talk to you about what we feel is key to success these days. And we're going to be working with several of our advisors who you see on the screen and a couple of really great folks from both Semarchy and Alation. So before we introduce ourselves, I'm going to go ahead and tell you I'm Julie Burrows. I'm one of the advisors, and I'm going to moderate for you today. Alexis, the light bulb down there, she's in the background too, helping people get on, etc. Just to let you know, we will be recording the session today. We will be, we'll also be taking questions over in chat, and there's a reason for it. The reason for it is the fact that we are going to have people moderating. I'm sorry, I got people asking me stuff over here. We're going to have people moderating that chat so we can answer the questions as we go, all right? So we're going to start with Mike Lampa. Introduce yourself, please.
Hey, everybody. Mike Lampa. I'm one of the advisors with Great Data Minds. I've been Julie's partner in crime for eons, and I'd like to offer up that having Julie as a moderator will be one of the most unmoderated moderations we'll experience. I'm so excited to be with y'all today.
Anna, you want to go next? Anna Navarette.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Anna Navarette. I'm an advisor with Julie, Great Data Minds. I've done Julie for like 20 plus years, I'd say. Primarily being using her services, so this came out on the other side. I'm looking forward to it.
Cool.
Yeah. Anna comes with a great background around governance, MDM programs, etc. Mr. Willoughby and your she-shed.
Hi, Joe Willoughby, Director of Data Engineering for American Association Insurance Services, mouthful, so we just say AAIS, which is not really easier.
So you have a stutter?
I mean, I used to actually, but I think I probably know Julie maybe the least because we only met like 8 years ago. Is that right? But have gone through a lot of different stages of maturity with data governance, data management, data engineering along the way. So good ride.
We're lucky to have Joe as an advisor too. He gives insights for us in our organization. So Mike and Joe and Anna are going to be presenting today, and then we're going to hand it over to two of my favorite people that I get to work with often, and that's Anna Ryder with Semarchy. You want to go ahead and say a little bit about yourself, Anna?
Hi, yep. I'm Anna. I work at Semarchy and the customer success folks there, and I will be showing you our new data hub on XDM today.
Yay. And Chan, the man.
Hey, how's it going, y'all? My name is Chan Manchanda. I'm an account executive over at Alation. Been here for about 1.5 years now. Before that was at a couple BI shops. Really excited to show you Alation, and this is actually the first time we are unveiling our new UI in a larger group setting like this, so I'm pretty excited to have you guys check that out as well.
Awesome.
All right, Mike, I'm going to let you start showing. I wanted to let you guys know that we have participants from around the globe, and we're excited to have those. Do me a favor, go ahead and put in chat your city and where you're coming from. Okay, Mike, so I already went through this slide.
Hold on, I'm just getting myself adjusted here. Okay. Hey, look at all those people.
There you are. In black. But I did want to say thanks to our sponsors today. We have Alation as with Chan, and of course Semarchy with Anna. But thank you so much for sponsoring this event and for doing all the hard work you did to invite people to it. And Mike,
our pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mike. I am getting some chat, so I'm going to let you do this so I can go over and help Alexis moderate some stuff.
Okay, great. So just to kick things off. For those of you that haven't been on our recent rounds of workshops, Great Data Minds looks at modernizing the analytics program across 5 different pillars. The data management pillar, which is all things around data integration, data persistency, serving up data products for analytic consumption, and all the underlying enabling capabilities like compliance and governance and quality and integration and harmonization and cataloging and all that kind of stuff. Then data ops is a adaptation of the DevOps discipline that has been in software development for quite a few years now. And it's really all around automating those continuous integration and continuous deployment data pipeline and the containerization of builds so that we can deploy across environments with a high degree of reliability and stability, and the ability to decouple the deployment of solutions from releasing the solutions for active production. And all of the automation around those data engineering and data pipeline builds. Self-service analytics is, we believe, a very key element to getting to innovation through analytics at scale, where we put the appropriate tools that enable access to the data products that we're building in the hands of the information consumers and the knowledge workers that really know what they want to do with the data to optimize their function or to innovate their products and services that they sell to their customers, putting it in the hands of the business. And it's not just visualization, but it's also data curation. It's also self-service data science, which we're seeing a continued expansion of the self-service platforms across the analytics ecosystem. Then lean agile product management is taking a product development, product management mindset to our analytic program, and using lean principles to continuously have a relentless focus on continuous improvement and to generate continuous value, taking an economic point of view around our analytic program, and build a portfolio of data products that enable analytic products that generate value to the business, and do it in a continuous method. So this is all around program execution, and taking a very customer-centric focus by using design thinking, and taking a very end-to-end ecosystem focus using systems thinking. And then the final pillar, which is actually the foundation across our 5 areas of focus, is the human part, making sure that we are enabling our employees and our ecosystem and any of the humans, whether it's our suppliers or our customers and the employees, to make sure we're enabling good collaboration, we're creating a sense of transparency, we're promoting data literacy, we're constantly investing in the mastery of our employees through education. We're enabling and empowering our employees through giving them authority to make more decisioning, which is part of the lean agile mindset. And we're also making sure that we constantly communicate the purpose of our organization so everybody can get behind that purpose for the humans. And it's all about nurturing the humans through transformation, because what we're seeing is in the analytics space, transformation is happening at a much more dynamic pace and a much more frequent pace. So these are the 5 pillars. And today we're going to be kind of focusing around the data management area as we explore the purpose and the use of XDM platforms and data catalogs, and what it can do for our data governance and our master data management sub-programs within the analytics program. Okay. So today's agenda, we're going to put out an idea around modernizing our data governance and our MDM programs. And we're going to talk a little bit about taking a disruptive approach towards implementing quality and governance and mastering. And then we want to see these products, very exciting to see both of our products, and talk a little bit about going beyond the platforms themselves and extending our programs. And then just kind of wrapping things up and giving you a few key takeaways to get started down the path of investigating, adopting, implementing, and operationalizing these platforms to generate even more value to your analytic program. And we anticipate having ample time to take questions and answer those. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the traditional versus modern master data management, data governance. So data governance had a go for about 16 years, or 18 years rather, if I do my math right. It's new math. And they've categorically, the data governance programs have been a miserable failure. And there's a need for it because there's a lot of money being lost through improper quality. There's been some significant fines levied because we're not compliant with some key privacy and data management requirements across the globe. And because we don't have the appropriate governance driving the appropriate security and security checks, and data breaches are still happening and costing a lot of money. Right? We need to fix this program in this process. Right? Let's talk a little bit about some of the trends we're seeing to reinforce our position and recommendations as we go forward. So we ran out to the cloud, and then we started pulling it back because we pushed a bunch of data up into the cloud and started playing around, and we're really enjoying the unbridled access to all sorts of data and whatnot, and we didn't have any kind of governance in place.
Yeah, Mike, it was funny because I told you about that time I was at lunch, and Informatica said, you know what, we're just doing really well because of boomerang theory. Everyone ran to the cloud.
So we had to start pulling that data back. I love that little guy. It was sitting much at the slide. Okay, so just another kind of trend, just the exponential growth in data under management and enabling analytics programs, this by Perkins. And you can see from 2005, 2010, a pretty significant jump when you look at the percentage of increase. And then from 2010 to 2015, in sheer size, another pretty significant growth at 9%. But then the estimate is between 2015 and 2020 we're doubling in the rate of increase, from 9% to 16% increase. And you can see the steep slope that we're looking at. And in 2020, in the next 5 years, we're expecting to over double in that rate of increase again. There's a lot of data being put under management. And there's several things triggering that we'll talk about. One is insights for everyone, right? Enabling that self-service program we talked about before in the opening. We want to get the information in the hands of the information consumers, and we want to enable them to innovate and hypothesis test and mash up additional data. And that's creating a lot of that dynamic growth, because we're not only processing the data within our four walls, but we're starting to get after external contextual data.
Like another thing that impacts this is the fact that new technologies like ThoughtSpot and others that are coming out that Google just ask, even verbally ask, but it even goes down to how their subscriptions work, which are, unlimited users.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And, a lot of people starting to adopt those types of tools, mainly because they're, AI generated like Alation is, or AI is a foundational product, but analytics for all is truly where things are going now, and being able to just skip the dashboard, give us an answer.
Yeah, it was interesting. We were discussing that very thing with a board of directors in the healthcare industry yesterday, and we were explaining to them, this is about enabling the care provider, the professional care provider, with the ability to get insights. You don't have to be a data professional. You need to be a professional in your business. Another trend that's going on is artificial intelligence or machine learning, predictive analytics, advanced analytics, whatever nomenclature you want to use, are growing. And they have, it's the new table stakes, and it's going to generate a lot of value, as you can see by the McKinsey report from the AI frontier. We're going to generate between $3.5 to almost $6 trillion in value in business across 19 industries that they analyzed, which really accounts for 40% of the overall analytic value contribution, right? And the interesting thing about that is when you start to get into advanced analytics, the real power of those machine learning models is to continually innovate and ideate on external data that I can mash up with my existing internal business operations data to find those truly significant features that help us more accurately predict the outcome that we're trying to achieve. So a lot of pressure on a lot more data, and those machine learning models go through a lot more work to create the data that they need, right? Then, of course, there's this renewed attention to governance and master data management, and why is that? Right? Well, some real key, market rhythm that happened was the rollout of GDPR in Europe, and then closely right behind that, California's flavor of GDPR. And you can see there's a lot of similarities between the two. And these are regulatory requirements that have recourse if you don't comply. And that recourse is in the form of economic impact, significant fees if you can't demonstrate you're complying with the requirements of these privacy acts.
Hey, Mike, this is we're going to be sending the slides out.
Mm-hmm.
This is a cool little cheat sheet for you guys. So we put a link to this Varonis site where you can find this diagram, and each one of those things listed is clickable. So you can, it's a good cheat sheet for you to have on your desktop.
Yep, very cool. All right. And then from a data literacy perspective, we really need to get real good at understanding our data. And as I'm trying to implement a program around increasing data literacy, and this goes back to the human part, right? I want to make sure I've got a good planning process and then a communication collaboration process that gets the workforce involved with where is their literacy today, where's the literacy that they would like to get to as a part of an assessment, so that we can implement a learning culture and get prescriptive in the kind of learning that we want to do. And this is all in context of improved data literacy. And then measure, is our literacy improving or not? Can we tell good stories or not? And if not, let's revision and replan. It's kind of the plan, do, check, and act cycle that is part of the lean principles and disciplines.
Really want to get your folks collaborating with data and even arguing, I heard the other day, with data.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
The journey, but it's, it just is so amazing to see these teams that are data literate that we work with.
Yep. To that point, the International Institute for Analytics, which is founded by Tom Davenport, they do annual CAO summits, Chief Analytic Officer summits, and they hand out the Annie Award to 3 organizations that presented the most compelling advanced analytics use case. And 2 years in a row that I went to the CAO summit, all 3 of the winners had one thing in common that they said was very critical to their success. And that was they hired a data journalist that could tell a very compelling and meaningful business story with the advanced analytic insights that were being generated.
Yeah, we follow Ben Jones. There's a bunch of folks out there doing data literacy, but we follow Ben Jones. So I just put his site, dataliteracy.com, pretty easy to remember. It's out there. Want an introduction to Ben? More than happy to do it. He's a great guy. He was at Tableau for years advocating data literacy. Mm-hmm. And felt like it was falling a little bit on deaf ears out there. So he went and he started his own organization that's really powerful.
Yep. Yeah, so remember when big data came along and we were talking about the V's, right? And there were the 3 V's, and then I think it went up to 12 V's at one point. It was kind of, felt like a hype because the V dialogue kind of went away, but the reality is the size of our data and the levels of detail and the different kinds of query languages that we're using and the dispersity of the data, and as we saw earlier, that dynamic growth and these very different and complex structures, all of that is still very true, and we're trying to wrestle all that down so we can rationalize it down and feed advanced machine learning based models, and of course, our analytic, visualization, insight generations, right? And we got to turn this stuff into digestible, quantifiable, meaningful information, and need to have a lot of governance around that. So data is complex. I mentioned a little bit about the machine learning table stakes. It's the new table stakes. If companies that are not focusing on building up a discipline around data scientists to help them differentiate are going to be left behind. And one of the things that is very important when you're doing advanced analytics is you have to take the existing data that you've worked so hard to integrate and transform and persist in your data warehouse. Those data scientists take that information out of the data warehouse and they pretty much dismantle it down into features, which are little bits of data that is changed from qualitative to quantitative signals, so that they can feed their machine learning models. And the concept of feature store is gaining traction. The point being, if I can save the output from that feature engineering and make it available for other data scientists as a reusable store, and in the catalog annotate what data is in that feature store and where it could be used for which kinds of business problems or which kinds of machine learning models, is going to be a very important new construct within our analytics ecosystem. And then all the work to triage that data into training data sets versus testing data sets is also very important, because in some highly regulated areas, you have to recreate sometimes the analysis you did to prove your insights, right? So again, more focus around more data being created against existing data, which means more governance and oversight that's going to be necessary. And of course, understanding the customer for things like reducing churn, so that I can optimize the cost of acquisition of customers and be assured of a level revenue stream, is very important. But also understanding the customer, because I have to comply with things like GDPR and CCPA. I need to know everything about my customer and where is that across all my disparate systems, because those customers could come along and say, I want you to show me everything you know about me, or I want you to forget me. And you have to do it in an orderly and timely fashion. And of course, if you don't do that, not only are you going to get fined, but there are a lot of companies who trust in their brand is their differentiation, especially.
Mike, I think you're freezing up a little bit.
Member-based organizations. Am I still frozen, Julie?
You were for a second.
Okay.
But I think you're back.
Oh, I just got a message. My internet connection is unstable.
Your internet connection?
Well, it goes right along with the presenter, a little unstable. Anyway, not only do you want to be mindful of the economic impact by incurring fines, but there's a lot of organizations who differentiate on undeniable trust in their brand. And if you end up with one of these legacy events where your data was breached, or you couldn't prove to your customer that you knew everything about them or complied with their opt-outs, that can erode your brand. And that's important to the organization as well, and can be quantified rather.
So Mike, on that note, I've got a couple of stats from a CISO friend of mine.
Yeah.
According to the guide for the CCPA violations, fines and penalties, typically, if you have 5,000 consumers who are violated, that usually counts almost up to 30,000 separate violations. With the CCPA, that could be between $300,000 and $1.5 million in fines.
Yeah.
Just for that. For GDPR, there's been 410 fines since they enacted it, and that's equated to 177 million euros. The largest was 50, which you showed for Google earlier in France, and the smallest was 48 euros from a police officer in Estonia. So, but the other part of that is the thought is that aside from the fines and financial loss, they're saying that a data breach, the average breach in the US costs $7.9 million. And that is inclusive of reputational damage. That includes like low confidence, negative press, loss of clients, and then operational disruptions. You know, sometimes it can take months before you recapture data. So at the end of the day, there's a local university here in Colorado who actually had a data breach in July, and they didn't get their systems up and running to full capacity until December.
Wow.
So when you have that, you have the inability of students to get to what they need, you have the inability for the staff to support, so it's just like this domino effect. So I think aside from the legal ramifications, I think the cost is much more broader than just the fines. And it's just something to keep in mind.
Right, right. So we got to come up with a way to get governance integrated back in and overcome the last 18 years of failure.
Yeah, it's critical to know where your data is.
So let's talk about a disruptive approach. Right? We want to get away from these monolithic governance programs, these monolithic master data management programs and data quality programs. Right? We want to move away from these governance programs of yore. And I've been, even just recently, on engagements where the governance implementation that was being laid out took about 9 months to define what governance is and create all these organizational constructs. So we defined the executive council, and then we tried to find executives that would sit on the executive council who don't have any time. So they said, well, fine, well, you can add me to that council, but who's going to do the work? So, well, we'll create the approval council, and your senior VPs and your directors will sit on that, and they'll approve recommendations and say, okay, but who's going to do the work? Well, we're going to have the working council, and they'll be consisting of data owners and data stewards. So, okay, great. So who are the people that we're going to put in all these roles? Well, I'm not sure, because you're already overstrapped because everybody's got a full-time job and they're wrestling with poor quality data to begin with. But we got to get them assigned. We're going to give them responsibilities to document policies and guidelines and processes. And then we're going to get these data stewards stood up so that they get in, they look at all these data elements and define rules for quality and rules for governance, right? It doesn't work. 9 months later, I've got all these plans and these hierarchical organizational pictures, and I have names assigned to it, but no work is being done. We got to break that cycle, right? Because we're spending a lot of money and we're waiting a long time and we're not getting any results. So what does the organization do? They go to path of least resistance and move on and try to get some work done, and our data is still at risk, and I'm incurring technical debt as a result of that.
You know, Mike, and we see a lot of that sunk cost fallacy, you know, where people have invested so much in old traditional ways.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just the reach. It's hard for them to come back and, I don't want to say restart, but they know they've got, you know, they're working in a way that could be more agile, but they're not willing to, you know, step back and say, okay, we're going to bring in additional software, other software, and change our processes and stuff. So we see it too.
Yep. And this is a real life example, isn't it, Julie, that I'm showing here?
Yeah, this is one of our clients. We went in and did some estimates for them for their program. Mike put together a checklist on what they need to do to look for the right type of technology, and we made recommendations on modern type processes for them. And they went out and they got, from traditional guys, no names mentioned here, their average was 1.5 million and implementation was 18 months. Actually, to the right where it says modern is Semarchy. And this was a very large organization, so Semarchy isn't always with this number, but they were able to implement in 18 weeks. So big conglomerate, but it's amazing the money that can be and the time.
Yep. Real life. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So just a little bit about Agile, lean Agile, right? The whole goal here is everything is continuous. I got these continuous wheels constantly churning. I'm continuously innovating. So I'm looking for what's the next great thing we can do to differentiate ourselves through analytics. Let's prove that out. Let's hypothesis test. And once we land on something, let's get it prioritized for building out and operationalizing. So I'm constantly feeding work, and I'm constantly feeding value associated to that work done into the continuous integration cycle, right? And continuous integration is constantly pushing out delivery data pipelines and data products and analytic products into the continuous deployment cycle. And then as we're implementing it, more advanced analytics, once we deploy those machine learning based models, there's a continuous training and monitoring of efficacy, looking for drift, so that we can constantly enhance those models all the way to the point where, as we get a good handle on those drift patterns, we can start letting those models use machine learning to educate and enhance themselves. So
fair to say, though, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but is it fair to say that, you know, to put this into practice, you really have to invest in your organization with Lean Agile? We, you know, we do a workshop and we do a poll, and most people come back and say they're fragile, fragmented Agile.
mm-hmm.
So the investment in Lean Agile is definitely a must here, right?
Exactly, right. And what we're pushing is an adaptation of Lean Agile for the analytic program. We got to get away from looking at things as projects and get into building these minimum viable product implementations, continuously generating value in the shortest amount of time possible.
Yep. Yeah. We the principles we work off are scaled Agile, you know, but I think if we can make any recommendation is invest in getting your teams, you know, on the Lean Agile train.
Mm-hmm. So I want to define a concept of critical data elements. I mentioned earlier that I've been on several governance projects and master data management projects for that matter, and data quality projects that just, they're these behemoth programs that just don't get traction. I was in Honeywell for almost 2 years driving out analytic demand I was an employee of Honeywell. And one of my peers was brought in to start to drive the master data management program. And I really
Mike, you're freezing a little bit.
loved the approach she took. She came in and said, we're going to apologize for that. Let me know when I'm back.
You are. You're back.
Okay. So the critical data element approach was what she wanted to do instead of trying to boil the ocean. And she tied it to the strategic objectives of the organization at that time, which was to improve working capital. So she went and focused on what critical data elements do I need to put under governance to improve accounts receivable performance, accounts payable performance, and inventory management performance. And she just started picking those critical data elements and put them under governance and started achieving improvements that met the working capital goals. Right? And that's the recommendation we're making, is take a critical data element approach. You don't have to put everything under governance. You got to put the critical stuff under governance, and you continually do it, rolling out minimum viable product, right? So with governance and master data management and data quality, we got to think about it as characteristics. All three of these are additional characteristics that define a data product that we're rolling out as part of an MVP to enable analytics. We want to make sure we're if I'm going to build an analytic, it's aligned to a strategic objective. And as part of achieving that strategic objective, I'm going to identify those critical data elements that are important for that analytic and put it under governance. Same with master data management, data elements or quality data elements. And then we have to make sure we engage all of the business operations, because you really need to understand the business processes when we're talking about governance and mastering and data quality. And then very important as part of the take an economic view on building product, quantify the value of governance or mastering or quality, right? And then align these requirements as additional characteristics that define the analytic product and the data product, and add them as features via epics. And if you have to enable master data management or data quality or data governance with platforms, add those enablers as architectural runway components that I have to have these new platforms put in place so I can deliver on those features, right? And then make sure there's implementation details that all flow into the data catalog, and then execute in cross-functional agile teams that include governance responsibilities and people that are also responsible for defining quality and master data management roles and rules, right, as part of rolling out that data product. Right?
So, Mike,
yeah.
You see the little thing up in the top right, you guys? That's a key resource. So this is actually comes from our modernization workshop. We're going to be sending the slides, but you know, you can use this as a checklist. So whenever one of our programs or events and you see key resource, you know, use this as kind of a checklist.
Right. So what we're getting away from is having programs, self-contained programs that are trying to boil the ocean, and we're moving it into characteristics for as part of having a holistic definition of the requirements for a data product. I'm going to pause for a second. Joe and Anna, pile on anytime you would like to. Yeah.
I don't know that they heard you, Mike. I heard you.
So the other concept that we have to keep in mind as we're trying to get to analytics for all, and we're trying to get to continuous innovation, that requires the ability for the business to play around with the data to see if they can come up with a cool, new, differentiating capability, right? So in order to enable that, I need varying levels of governance implementation. Governance without a gavel all the way to with a sledgehammer, as we move from ideation into operationalization of a data product to enable an analytic product.
Hey, Mike, can you go back to the last slide, the key resource? Jed is asking if you could go through the 5th bullet and kind of validate that.
Align as characteristics?
Yeah, he said having trouble parsing the 5th bullet.
Okay, so what I'm talking about there is as we're driving out the definition of an analytic product and a data product as part of our analytic portfolio, the governance characteristics and mastering characteristics and quality characteristics had to be part of the definition of those products that we're building. So it's not just the data product itself that has a value and use and whatnot. It's not just the analytic product that has calculations and whatnot, but we have to understand what kind of governance do I need to put around this, right? What kind of quality do I need to implement around these data elements? And do I need to master this information? And if I do, what are all my publish and subscribe rules and requirements? Did that help?
Yeah, we have another question. Hey, Juan, if you have more questions, throw them over in chat. So if you guys have questions, throw them in chat. I didn't see this one. Which strategies of design thinking you use to explore the problem?
Which strategies? I'm sorry, could you say it again?
Okay, which strategies of design thinking do you use to explore the problem? And I think maybe we could talk about.
Okay. So,
Go ahead.
yeah, I'm not sure if I have a design thinking slide, but so design thinking first, the first key step is we got to understand the problem and the need, right? So we go through divergent exploration of what is the problem? What is your need? What is your problem? You know, we collaborate with multiple people that make up the voice of the customer. And then once we have a good understanding of all the dynamics around the problem or the need, then we go into convergence, which is bringing it back together to have a holistic definition of the customer need or the problem, right? And typically when I'm needing to put governance or MDM or quality in places because I got a problem with data, right? And then as we're doing that design thinking, then we go into solution. So we got the definition of the problem. Now I want to do divergent solution ideas. So I'm ideating on different kinds of solutions, and I'm testing it and vetting it real quickly to get to the point where, okay, we think we have a good solution design that will meet the requirements of the need. Right? That's design thinking. And then you can go further beyond that and drive out fundamental details around the analytic product and the data product using behavioral storytelling.
Okay. I'm going to take 2 more questions and then I'm going to keep moving just because of time and we'll come back to them. Maybe Mike could even hit them while Ian and Anna are doing their thing. But this is from Noor. And what is meant by capture governance implementation details in the data catalog? Does that mean the metadata capturing?
Yep. Right. So as we're identifying those characteristics, whether it's governance characteristics or the MDM rules or the data quality rules, that all should be captured in the catalog. Okay. So that people can look and see that.
Okay. And then our buddy Jennifer, hey Jennifer, how do you approach getting an organization to document and understand their business processes when it's basically chaos?
Well, the simple way is you get them in a room, and this day it's going to be virtual, and you have them describe their process and you draw pictures until they say, yeah, that's our business process. You build business process flow diagrams and you link those process boxes, if you will, with the information flows between those processes. And then as I define the process, I want to define the components that control the inputs, the components that transform those inputs to produce the outputs, define the process that posts the outputs, define the process that governs and controls how I transform the input to the output in simple form.
Okay. We have, if anyone on this call wants to dig deeper, we have a small workshop around this as part of a bigger 2-hour workshop, but certainly we can do a little bit deeper dive and even go into Agile. So don't hesitate to ask us any of that. So
cool. Thanks for those questions, guys.
Yep.
I felt like Stump the Jump there for a minute. All right. So game-changing technology. We're going to get into the fun part of this workshop today. Alation and Semarchy are 2 of our very valued technology partners. Julie and I and all the great data minds advisors recognize that the technology, enabling technology landscape is on fire. It's changing all the time and it's getting cooler and cooler and more game changing. So we have to constantly assess the market and look for the best of breed and given the criterion that we believe is important based on the collective input that we get from our customers. Right? And Alation and Semarchy are 2 of our very valued partners.
Yeah, and one of our core tenets is, of course, using cloud services, but in addition to that is finding technologies that have AI embedded. So that's really key these days and saves organizations so much time and money. We'll see some of that from Chan. Yep.
And boy, I tell you what, as an old practitioner, as a data architect, I sure wish I would have had some of these tools. I made a lot of mistakes not knowing what I was about to deal with that these augmented data catalogs can unveil for me. Right. So data catalogs are important. They're on the forefront. Very cool technology, right? And I like this source from Gartner because it lays out some of the key function points that you want to look for in an augmented data catalog tool. On the machine learning side, it's using algorithms to assess the content of the data, look at the metadata structure of that same data, assess the actual appearance of how data is linked together versus the constraints defined on the database, and deliver results of all that discovery. So you might think it looks like this, but from our discovery and the profiling results, we're making some recommendations around these things are very similar, even though they don't look similar. And start to cluster information together. I could start to tag things, start to make recommendations around this column, although it says phone number, sure looks like it's got social security numbers in it, right? You might want to put that under PIA, right? And then on the enablement side, enabling the business to own the catalog content, good collaboration vehicles so I can crowdsource the curation of business definitions in the glossary, associating data together, classifying the data based on how it's being used, allow people to make annotations. Oh, I used it for this and it was really cool. Allow them to apply contents. Give me sentiment, feedback. How useful is this information to you? So these are the kinds of things that we're looking for when we're talking about augmented data catalogs.
Hey, Brandon, I see your question out there. I think I'm going to let Chan go through what his presentation, and then let's come back to it, okay? We're not ignoring you.
Yep, good, thank you. So augmented, collaborative, extensible. Can I add additional kinds of characteristics into my catalog that don't come out of the box? And is it built for the business steward, right? This can't be a technical implementation. It has to be a business implementation.
Mike, fair to say too that the UI is critical, right?
Yep. Yeah. And to me, that's a very important element of enabling the business steward. It's got to be easy to use, right?
Right.
So.
In from San Francisco, come in.
Hello, how's it going? Thank you guys. Thank you for having us. Thank you, Mike and Julie.
You're very
really
welcome.
excited to be here.
Yeah,
and it's interesting.
We're gonna go off camera.
Sorry, go on.
Advisors will, so they can focus on your cute mug.
Sure.
So
that's quite nice of you.
I stopped sharing. You got it. I'm going off camera.
Fantastic. Just a quick tech check. Can you all see my screen here?
Yes, sir.
Fantastic. And it's interesting because a lot of what Julie and Mike were talking about really resonated with me as Alation as a company, right? So when you talk about some of the challenges that you face when standing up a governance program, there's obviously this dichotomy between the business folk and then the governance folk, and there's friction that arises. Well, why does this happen? A lot of this happens because if you look at one unit, right, they're looking to basically enforce policy and make sure that the data is being used in a compliant fashion. And the other side is trying to use the data as much as possible so they can actually provide analysis, answer questions. What Alation does, and Brandon, this might begin to answer your question, because when you think about a data catalog fundamentally, right, it's just a repository of metadata. But what Alation does that's a little different than other people is we use a platform approach. So not only do you get a catalog, but you also get a solution that can facilitate use cases like data migration, governance, privacy, and analytics productivity. and the way I'm going to really preface this conversation here, so I'm a new analyst jumping into, or just any data knowledge worker jumping into an organization for the first time, right? Some of these challenges that I'll be talking about are going to be further exemplified here with the distributed environment that we kind of work in right now. How do you onboard this person? How do you make them feel comfortable with your data landscape as Avocet, this insurance business, to make sure that they can start using the data within your organization at a fast pace? Well, let's jump into the product here a little bit. This is the landing page. So we are a browser-based solution, and everything that you see today comes packaged in one solution, which is a little different than other solutions in the market, right? A lot of the other solutions, they have modularized solutions where you'll have to have a data catalog that's standalone with, that you have to additionally purchase a governance suite. We like to package everything together so you don't have to buy several solutions. What's really nice about Alation, you can see that it's a very human-centric, navigable design. Right off the bat, you can see I can navigate to different data domains. I'll be able to jump into different things that I am visited previously, and this is pretty atypical with Web 2.0 solutions, right? So you got something like history, you can bookmark things, and then finally watching. Watching is the most interesting one here because essentially what it does, when you're watching something, you'll be able to actually track the metadata changes as your own personal metadata change log. And what I mean by that is, let's say I'm watching the summary top diagnosis related group table. 2 columns end up dropping. What Alation will do is notify via either your inbox or your email that, hey, something has changed with this table. Go ahead and check it out before you use for analysis. Once again, kind of speaking a little bit to the distributed environment, right? This is going to be a great place for your corporation, organization, nonprofit, whatever it may be, to basically curate some information that's going to be key for this persona to actually understand as they're traversing your data landscape. In this case, you can see I have a business glossary that I can go into, and I'll jump into each one of these individually, but just wanted to show you a little high-level overview. This is also customizable. All these are tiles, right? So if you wanted the quick links to be something like data sources, tables, just an easier way to navigate through the environment, you can do that as well. In addition, you could see that you can also white label it so the look and feel will be familiar to the organization. Left-hand side, you can see what we can catalog here. So traditional RDBMSs, absolutely. The newer MPP solutions like the Snowflakes, the Teradatas of the world, 100% file systems, all the way down to different BI solutions, right? So the Power BIs, the Tableaus, the MicroStrategies, Clicks of the world will be able to catalog those as well. So what we basically do upon implementation, we connect to your data sources and we go through this process called metadata extraction. We're going to crawl through your entire landscape, whether that's repositories, BI solutions, or source systems. But where we really differentiate ourselves and our quote-unquote proverbial secret sauce is this process called query log processing. What it's doing is it's basically generating and gleaning the query logs that are produced by your SQL writers as well as the dashboards within your organization to create this idea of a behavioral analysis of how usage is happening within your organization of certain data artifacts. Additionally, we use linguistic intelligence to power our NLP search, right? So when you look at solutions like the Googles, the Amazons of the world, they inventorize a huge list of whether it's products, links, whatever it may be, and make this search relevant for the person who's making that search at the time, right? So let's go back to this idea of me being a new analyst. My boss, sorry, do we have a question?
Yep, just a little background noise, I think. So.
Oh, no worries. And my boss gives me my first assignment, right? He or she says, hey, Chan, build me a DRG report broken down by region, broken down by total revenue. Well, I don't know what DRG is, right? Traditionally, what I would do is I would tap somebody on the shoulder and figure out what table do I use to basically create this analysis. I'm a talented analyst. I know how to do this. I just don't know the data landscape. With Alation, what you can do is you can jump in, and as soon as you start typing DRG, like in Amazon, right, we have a recommendation engine where we'll start generating a list of data artifacts within your organization based on frequency of usage and relevancy. Let's dive a little deeper into this DRG table. I'm an analyst. I'm going to filter down by tables. And now I have a list of data artifacts that I can start thinking about using for my analysis. It's this initial process of discovery. A couple things that you're going to notice here. One, you'll see something that's called a trust check. A trust check is just basically a quick metric of trust that'll allow the person to understand that they're using the correct table. Additionally, speaking to linguistic intelligence, what Alation is doing, now typically, you know, no offense to any of the data architects in the room here, but sometimes the table names, source names, column names aren't really robust enough for new people to jump into the organization and really understand what they are. Some underscore top underscore DRG is a great example, right? What Alation's going to do is it's going to start generating titles for these tables columns automatically, and then it uses assisted machine learning with the iterative feedback loop in between machine and human to basically create a confidence score of different table names and names within your data landscape, which can all be searchable later on. Jumping into the catalog page here for the first time. Right away, what you can see is a pretty easy drill down from source, schema, table. Additionally, once again, you have that auto-generated title. And then you have this concept of a trust check, right? So you could see that this has been endorsed 9 times. There's a warning. Let's see what this is. This table has been tagged with PII. Please complete and pass the PII compliance test before accessing. These are all bidirectional links, either to the tag definition or the actual compliance. Additionally, you'll see a list of people who have endorsed this. Great, these people have endorsed this. How do I know they're the right people to endorse this? Well, I could see that Steve Berger is one of the people who actually endorsed this, and he's a steward of this artifact, so I can feel comfortable using this actual artifact. Now, a couple things Alation's going to do automatically here, right? So I talked about the titling. Additionally, what we're going to do automatically, and this is a key piece of usage for Alation, is we're going to generate a list of top users. And once again, the way we do this is through that query log ingestion. Why is this important? So from a end user perspective, I'm a new analyst. I don't know who to really go to about the specific artifact. What I can do easily is jump up here and I can hit this question mark and I could start collaborating with these top users that Alation generated automatically and ask if this has PII. Can I use this table to break down DRG codes? And what ends up happening in Alation is, like a living FAQ, all questions related to this data artifact actually stay on this right-hand side. So if I wanted to facilitate myself and see if that question's been answered already, I have a place to do that. Now, the next thing I'm probably going to want to do here, right, and I'll actually take the, for a quick second, I'll actually go to the different approach as well, right? Now, we're talking about the business user mostly. On the other hand, let's talk about the governance approach here, right? Typically, it's an onerous process to sit through and determine who the subject matter experts of specific sources, artifacts, domains, whatever it may be, are, right? It takes hours and hours of meetings. Because Alation is able to automatically generate these top users, you now have a qualified list of people that you can potentially elevate as stewards of this specific artifact. Going back to the analyst approach here, now what I want to do is really understand what's in this table and how it's used, right? So you've gone through the process of discovery, validation, now let's go through understanding. A breakdown of columns, the ordinal position of the column on the left-hand side, the source name of the actual column, and each one of this is a bidirectional link as well that I can jump into. And then finally, you have this auto titling that we do again for this column, right? So this is something that I'll be able to actually search within the catalog. A data type, and then finally this metric of popularity, which is powerful for the context, right? To be able to jump in as an analyst and understand how this table, what attributes are being used over and over again. But from a governance or cleanup or migration perspective, what I just did was I went from the table back to the schema level. This is a great place for me to understand what artifacts are actually being used within the schema, within the source. Now, typically, you're going to see a long tail of tables that are, you know, the one use tables either generated as views or generated to create dashboards. What Alation is going to tell you based off of that query log ingestion is, and creating this popularity metric is, hey, if you're going through a migration or a cleanup process or making sure you're identifying critical data elements, make sure that these are the elements that you focus your critical resources on to make sure they're accurate, to make sure that they're curated properly. Jumping back into the table here, the one other thing that I want to talk about here is typically when people move out of an organization, churn it's something that happens inevitably. We want to make sure that tribal knowledge and the contributions they've made are actually staying within the catalog. So if I actually go over to this profile, right, what this would say is gone in this case, but all of the queries that I've written, all of the things that I'm an expert of, the steward of previously will remain in the catalog, so you don't lose this information. Moving over to samples here, you know, maybe I want to understand what's in this table. What you'll see is based off of the database credentials that are provided in the catalog from this user, what we're going to do is we're going to obfuscate sensitive columns here, as well as show you a basic breakdown of what's in the table. Getting into the more of the behavioral context of the usage, right? If I jump into filters, now I can actually see how people are using this, how people are filtering this table to generate analysis. Additionally, if I jump into use values, you can see there's a deprecation. If I look at this deprecation, it says this filter does not include Vermont. It does not match the Northeast definition. If I was to use that filter, I would be warned that I'm using a deprecated filter. Now, traditionally, this analyst would have to sit in front of an ERD and figure out primary foreign key relationships. Alation is going to generate the most frequent foreign key, primary key relationships and what tables they're joined to automatically. Lineage. If I was to deprecate this table, I want to understand what the downstream impact is of me deprecating this table. You'll see that we're going from all the way from the source back here, and this is the table that we're looking at with column level lineage that breaks down how the columns interact with these different sources. Additionally, what you'll see here from source to target is this little data flow object. What the data flow object is, it's a documentation of the DML, so basically the data manipulation language or the transformation that takes place from source to target. And this is once again automatically generated through Alation. If I was to deprecate this table, everything here would show up as red, as well as anything used downstream from this table within Alation would also be also generate a notification. Moving over to the queries, it's no surprise that a lot of times people end up. It's not a surprise that people end up actually spending a ton of time within their organization recreating queries that have already been written, right? What's nice here is that you'll be able to publish a book of queries that are being used quite often in your organization. And then once again, the endorsements, the usage metrics follow throughout. Now we've actually gone through the process of discovery, validation, understanding. Let's actually go, let's see how you would be able to use, let's see how you'll be able to use this actual information that you have, right? So what Alation has, and it's actually one of a key features of adoption, right? One of the things one of the members asked here is, how do we get people to start documenting and actually putting in information catalog? Well, you have to give them something to actually use the catalog for, something that makes their life easier. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put in my database credentials. And all of this rich history and this crowdsourced information that end up actually being generated in the catalog, we want to make sure this information is curated to this person, like turn-by-turn directions as they're using the data, right? So I'm going to start writing my query here. And you'll see as soon as I start typing in an attribute, it automatically is going to generate the most popular attributes based on my database credentials, right? So I start hitting, so I'll use DRG. Additionally, what you'll see is down here, that there is a deprecation of DRG or DRG code. And once again, like turn-by-turn directions, as I'm writing this query, I can actually understand what I'm using and how to actually use it. For now, we're going to ignore this just because for the sake of this demonstration. But let's go ahead and maybe do a quick calculated field here. We'll do total discharges multiplied by average total payments. We'll set the alias here as total rev. Now, once again, we're able to use natural language and given names within Alation to actually write SQL, right? So you could see the sum top DRG, the actual endorsements, as well as the, once again, this is obfuscated in the view based on my database credentials. Now what we'll do is we'll do a join here. And what I'll do is, as soon as I start jumping in here, what ends up happening is I can start typing out the tables and it'll generate the join automatically for me. Let's do a group by really quickly. The DRG code. And then we can go ahead and run this table. What's good is not only can you execute this table directly from Alation, but let's say if this is a heavier query, right, that you should schedule for a later date, right, or a later time, you can actually go ahead and schedule the query for a later time. Additionally, what you'd be able to do, if I'm a younger junior analyst, I would be able to share this in real time with a senior analyst, maybe it's Julie, and say, hey, can you help me write this query? And you'll just pass the proverbial buck to her, and in real time, you'll actually be able to jump in and help this person. Additionally, you'd be able to export this to different BI solutions, as well as you'd be able to download this as a CSV. Jumping back here, what I do want to show you really quickly before my time runs out is some of the key glossary aspects, right? So in this case, I have a corporate KPI section, I have a policy center, and I have a business glossary. Maybe I'm trying to understand what the definition is of something like corporate revenue, right? So a glossary is going to be a collection of articles. An article is fundamentally a container of textual information. This is where you'll write your This is where you'll be able to write your glossary definitions, your KPI glossaries. This is where you'll actually be able to standardize some of the information that's been spread throughout your organization, sometimes like chaos, right? So I could start typing in corporate revenue, jump into the actual definition here, and then you'll see that in this case, there is a workflow that has been kicked off because it needs reviews because somebody tried to actually change this. The people who are stewards or editors of this information will be notified within their Alation inbox. Once this has actually been reviewed, you'll see a check mark here. Now, what you'll also see is just a basic definition of what corporate revenue is. You'll be able to see things like a profile of it. You'll be able to see things like different tables that are being used with corporate revenue. As well as you'll see bidirectional links to other things like BI reports. And this is a good example of what somebody that's left the organization would kind of look like here. And I know we covered a lot here in a very short period of time, but what I'd want to do is, I think I'm at the end of my time here, right, Julie, or do I have a little more time?
I'll give you about 5 more minutes.
Yeah, and I got a question
Okay.
for you too, Shane.
Sure.
But go ahead. I'll cover it at the end if you got a little more content.
No, please. Let's talk about the questions.
Let's go back to Brandon's question. He's asking about Data World, and I've not been exposed to Data World. Brandon's further offering up that data catalogs need to think about the ability to connect with data fabric architectures. What's my capability for creating new connectors?
Creating new connectors. So first of all, we come out of the box with 60 connectors, right? Additionally, we have a Additionally, we have a pretty extensible API, not only for individual components of Alation, but you'll also be able to spin up your REST connector. We do work with GCP and BigQuery, David. That's a good question. And then finally, you'd also be able to use custom JDBC drivers to connect to different things.
Okay. Thank you. Brandon, we'll see if that scratched the surface for you or not. Thank you, Jen.
And Mike Amal had a question too. I don't know if you see it out there. Let me see.
It feels like both this and a tool like ThoughtSpot need a lot of the same metadata attributes on the tables or columns. Can one feed the other, or would we have to maintain it both separately? So what you'd be able to do is you'd be able to connect it to your different solutions, and we would be able to pull the metadata from the metadata store or whatever it is. So like if you look at a different BI solution, right? So I'll jump into Tableau, for instance. What you'd be able to see is different things like, let's jump into demo here. You'd be able to see a breakdown of the different workbooks that are actually connected to Alation. In this case, Pfizer's actually doing a COVID-19 catalog with us. And let me actually pop into this one really quickly. And I will show it to you from a sales metric. Nope, that's not it either. Once again, you'll have to excuse me. This is a new UI for us, like I mentioned, so I'm still getting used to it myself. Nope, that's not it either. Let us see here. Yep, this would be a good one here. So you would be able to see the breakdown of popularity of this actual dashboard here. What's also nice is let me actually use our old instance so I can actually show it to you a little bit better here. I like to show the white labeled instance just so you can kind of see how we can customize the look and feel. If I was to jump into this, what I can do here is pop into this guy right here. You'll see a popularity of the breakdowns of the actual workbooks. And then we have a really tight integration with Tableau. That's why you're able to see something like hospital revenue analysis. What's also great is you'd be able to see the breakdown of the fields here, right? So I can actually see the calculations, measures, and dimensions of the actual usage within the individual worksheets. And then finally, a breakdown of lineage of the dashboard, right? So on the left-hand side, you've got your source tables, your Tableau data sources. In this case, you can see there is a deprecation within provider payments. I can scroll down here. I could see why this has been deprecated. And then, okay, so this is out-of-date data in this case. But I can also see exactly what this ends up being downstream as a total dashboard here.
Let's take this last.
I think I saw when you did your drop down of the BIs, was Looker in that list?
Yes. Okay.
So if we wanted to pursue connecting to ThoughtSpot, we would partner with you, with Alation, to figure out how to read the ThoughtSpot schema?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, gotcha. Yep.
Cool. Hey, Chan, I am putting you on restriction now. I think you've had time, and I thought that was awesome. Amazes me that you can
Wonderful
stuff so fast, and appreciate it so much. Keep the questions coming. We can answer them and even come back to them, but Chan will be available to see them now. Mike, we're going to turn it back over to you.
All right. Let me figure out how to get back so that you can turn it over to me. Thank you, Chan. All right. So a few implementation considerations. Again, analyze your various use cases. Drive what you're going to put into your data catalog. Again, take that lean, agile, MVP product mindset, where we're getting a lot of good observations and suggestions in the chat channel. And it was around, make sure you document your processes and workflows and whatnot. Absolutely, totally agree. And then capture those stewardship rule results in your catalog, right? But continually do it or you're not boiling the ocean is our implementation recommendations. Another thing is, as you're bringing in new data sources, it should be a policy that new data sources, even if I'm only going to use them in a sandbox, must go through the catalog, right? Because I want to be exposed and understand what's coming into the organization. And then align to your governance framework and your quality framework, so that you're bringing in those attributes and characteristics and metadata information. It could be in your glossary or other different kind of metadata attributes. XDM is the new improved MDM. And really what we mean by this is the first and second generation MDM products had, to a great degree, they were focused on specific domains. So we had customer data integration, MDM products, CDIs. We had product information management, MDMs like PIMs, even down to maybe specific for facility and address, right? In the XDM world, we're abstracting up. We're saying, I want to put persons and things and places under XDM management, and then I configure and instantiate persons. Maybe it's for customer, or maybe it's for supplier, or maybe it's employee, right? Or I'm going to instantiate things like maybe it's my product catalog, maybe it's my organizational unit, right? And places, maybe it's facilities, maybe it's shipping address, where I want to put the addresses under delivery point verification. And the goal here is, an important element is what we see. It's not just mastering data, like those primary domains that are really critical for business operations to be as accurate as possible, and for my analysis dimensions to have conformity. But reference data is incredibly important as well. The business community maintains a lot of lookup tables and crosswalk tables and cross-reference tables that drive very important elements of their day-to-day business operations within their group. We need to put some of that under reference data management as well, and standardize it using the same kinds of disciplines, so that the combination of those two can help drive better transaction processing and integration and categorization, classification of observations across the different transaction elements, right? As well as I'm bringing on all sorts of big data, and I want to stream in, social media and whatnot, and I want to classify it by my kinds of reference tags, et cetera, right? So I want to be able to not only master data, I want to maintain and put some governance and control around reference data and conformity, and I want to have the ability to integrate it cleanly and nicely with my business operations data, as well as the external contextual data that I'm bringing into the enterprise. So we have a tale of two attempts. My colleague, Anna, would you, Anna?
This was part of my old life. So just real quick. We had a project that made a single version. And it was estimating of oil the ocean exercise. We had over 280 elements, and we did the Big Bang approach.
Is anyone else struggling with understanding Anna?
Yeah, it sounds like R2D2.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe you could do a headset or something like that. We can come back to you while you try it. Okay, great. We'll come back to you after Miss Anna, our other Anna, does her presentation.
All right, let's bring it down.
Come on, Anna.
Hi, the other Anna.
Yes, Anna.
All right, let me show my screen. Okay, do you see a deck?
Yes. Yes,
Perfect. We do. Okay, we'll keep the slide very short. So I'm Anna. I'm going to be presenting XDM today. It's Semarchy's Intelligent Data Hub. So we'll talk about what does that mean. All right, so like Mike was talking about, we think of MDM as being the old school way of dealing with managing your data, because it used to be a very traditional model where things were siloed and fixed. But realistically, every organization is dealing with parties, right? That's the people, the accounts, the organizations, the individuals, right? Perhaps it's even citizens, constituents, members. And those people are linked to different areas that are, location based, right? Like Mike was mentioning, and they often interact with things, and it could be products or assets like equities and securities and bank accounts and checking accounts. And so that's what the Data Hub is really made to do. It goes multiple steps beyond the traditional master data, and it really looks at the holistic picture of what are all of the pieces of data we need to manage to really provide the business with the knowledge it needs to be able to deliver good business decisions, to increase customer loyalty, to deliver a better customer experience, to track supply chains, to manage costs and things like that, right? So, linking back to what Mike was saying about the value of AI, we see a lot of our customers wanting to adopt machine learning and AI and predictive analytics, but without having a solid core data that's trustworthy and governed, it's not possible to do that well, because you can't tell if you should trust that predictive analytics if you know that your data is a mess. So we're going to talk in this demo about what are the kind of functionalities that the Data Hub can help you with so that you can get a handle on your data. And just to give you, quick look, like we have a lot of customers across multiple different industries. You'll hear about AIS's story when Joe presents later in this webinar, and we'll also hear about some other success stories. But just to give you an idea, we work from industries all the way from pharma to financial services to retail to clothing and apparel and so on. Okay. So really, one thing I want to focus on was that story that Mike was talking about. The real value we see in having a data hub is being able to manage your data. But if you can't get that off the ground for years, that's really not going to be possible for you to get value. And so we really pride ourselves on being able to implement quickly and have that agile approach. Okay, so let's dive in now to that demo, and I'm going to show you what a typical business user and data steward might do on a day-to-day basis in the Data Hub, to give you an idea of how it is that the Data Hub can help you manage all of the data sets we talked about, right? From parties to locations to things. Okay, so we're gonna jump into this intelligent data hub. And before I do that, let me point out quickly, I am on the cloud here. In particular, I am using AWS. And so we are cloud agnostic. You can run us on Azure, AWS. We're also on-prem if you still prefer to do things on premises. So very agnostic in terms of what infrastructure you want to use. So let's dive into this intelligent data hub. All right, so first thing you should notice is the user interface. We prize ourselves on having a 21st century user interface. It's based on Google's material design. So Google did a lot of research on what they believe was the best user experience for the web and published all of that research, made it open source, and we went all in. And so if it looks and feels like a Google app or even a Google search, the way that you've got the big logo, lots of white space, if you have an Android smartphone, you might even notice that the menu collapses a lot like an Android smartphone application will. That's why. It's because we are using that forward-thinking, business-friendly user interface. So let's do a Google-style search here. I'm going to search for an organization called Chevron. So let's take this as a kind of B2B account example. When I search for that term, I can see all of the data that I have that pertains to this term Chevron. So we have different, one company and different contacts, and they're probably related to Chevron because these contacts work at that organization. Okay, so if I click on here, we can start to see this golden view about chevron. So what do I mean by a golden view? A golden view is that view of a record of an account in this case that's been consolidated across multiple systems. And so this is the trustworthy version of that data that's already been cleansed, standardized, and the best attributes from all the different sources have been selected and presented here. Okay, so what we know about this organization is we've got some basic information like the name, the revenue, the contacts that work there. What I want you to keep in mind is everything that I'm showing you is configurable in the data model. So we don't come with a pre-built data model, which is how we're able to be agile. So you don't have to spend a lot of time breaking apart an existing fixed customer or product model that doesn't conform to your business. We encourage you to configure and build whatever is the best model that fits your requirements, okay? So everything you see, if it doesn't make quite the same sense for you, just keep a note that it can be tweaked a little bit to make it work for your environment. Okay, so what we can see here is we've got some extra information about this particular account, like the sector, some EIN numbers. We can also embed third-party charts here. So in this case, we've got this dynamic third-party chart about the chevron ticker. Of course, for you, it could be anything, including images. Like if you have a product catalog, you could have a number of different images of your products. You could even have different location information. So let's take a look at what that might look like from the location tab here. Okay, so we're now talking about, a lot of businesses deal with having a lot of address data, especially if you're in the retail industry and you've got a lot of different stores all over the country or all over the world. In this case, we're able to also manage this address information. We provide it with the input that we get from the source system, and then we enrich this information using third-party data. So in this case, we're using Melissa data. We can also connect with Google Maps. They have an API where you can purchase data to enrich your address information. And you can see here, we are even able to embed this, dynamic map here where we can, see the actual location of this geographic information. So this can be really helpful when I'm dealing with construction clients who want to see a work site because they don't always have fixed addresses yet, especially if they're dealing with a new construction or a project like, green energy where you've got solar panel like wind farms, or even oil and gas where you don't have a traditional address. And so having an embedded map is really helpful to see that kind of information. So you'll notice, we've got this input address, which is pretty clean, but we're still able to supplement it with extra data like full latitude and longitude here and other attributes that are spelled out. So this helps really when you're starting to see this perspective from the master data level. So let's take a look at what this looks like from the different source systems. Okay, so this golden view that I built out, this is really coming from, in this case, 5 different source records. So 3 of them are from CRM. So we've got a deduplication story here, meaning salespeople in the Salesforce instance, for example, or in whatever CRM you're using, they've accidentally created multiple records that are duplicates and they all point to the same account. So we're able to deduplicate and collapse those down, but we also have a consolidation story where across different source systems, we're able to bring the data together so we can have what we like to call a 360-degree view of this account. And so in that case, we've got source systems like the finance system and maybe, the support system that has provided some of this information about Chevron. And so we're able to then take all of these perspectives and consolidate them together. So what you're seeing highlighted in blue here are the surviving values. And what that means is if we've got 5 different source records and we're trying to match and merge them so we can deduplicate them and consolidate them down to one golden record, we are going to have some logic to choose what is the value we want in that golden record. right? Because if you've got 5 different company names, how do we know which one should be the winner? And we can define that using what we call survivorship rules. And those survivorship rules are showing you what is highlighted in blue is the winning process that, or the winning value that won to create this golden record. And so it's a good way for you to understand, you know, these are the kinds of challenges that our customers are dealing with, where, for example, you might have Chevron Corporation and Chevron showing up. As a human, I can tell that's the same, but a computer doesn't really compare them as apples to apples because it sees that corporation and thinks it might be a different organization. So a lot of the processes that we want to do as part of building out that golden record before matching and merging can happen is we actually need to standardize some of this information. And so what we've done here is we've taken that Chevron Corporation, we've lopped off any of these business types. And so that could include corporation or LLC or incorporated or LLP for those financial services companies. And then we've uppercased everything so that we really are comparing apples to apples now in that matching process to identify these identical records, okay? Or identify these records that are the same, but they don't share a universal key. All right, so you can see, you know, more of that information, you know, as we're scrolling to see what values won and so on and so forth, okay? So now a huge component of tracking this master data, of course, is being able to see what the golden look like and how it changes over time. So let's take a look at what that history record means. And this is a huge problem for a lot of organizations that we're dealing with who are in highly regulated industries and have to have an audit trail. It's also important even if you don't have that regulatory compliance requirement, because it's just really useful for you to able to go back and see what that data looked like at a certain point in time. And so what you're seeing here highlighted in yellow are those values that are currently showing in the golden record. And what is not highlighted, like these other revenue numbers, these are the old values that were the values at a certain point in time and are no longer the case, right? So if we take a look here at these values, we can see that there have been changes over time, right? The revenue numbers have changed over time. Some of these checkboxes have changed. And we're able to not only document those changes, but we can see who made the change and when. So we can see at this point, you know, Matt, Mark, David at some point had made those changes and when. And so if you have a problem, you can always contact them and say, hey, you know, what's going on? Like, what did you change this record and so on. We can also go back to this browse as of date. I like to call it the time machine feature, because what I can do is actually click on here and say, yeah, show me the data as it looks at a fixed point in time. And again, that's really helpful when you're dealing with closing out the books at a certain quarter, or you need to go back and look at a specific point in time what that data looked like. And so you can actually, you know, click on here and say, hey, yeah, let me see the data, you know, June 3rd, let's say, you know, at 12 p.m. or something like that. And then actually click there, and then it'll show you what that record looked like. And you can see that that revenue number has changed. Okay, so this kind of gives you a quick look at what a business user might be dealing with on a regular basis. Not only can you see some of these important pieces like the master data of how we got to this golden record and the history, we can also browse the relationships that are in this data, right? So this is the graph view, which gives us a different look compared to the table view that we previously had of these relationships, which are sometimes harder to express in a rows and column format. So what we're seeing here is, you know, here's Chevron, here are all the contacts that work for Chevron that we are in regular communication with. But we can also see that Chevron rolls up to this sales hierarchy of the Western US. And I can actually see here, you know, let's take a look at all of the other companies that are part of the same hierarchy, right? And so I can expand here and we can start seeing all these companies like BNSF Insurance, ExxonMobil, Berkshire Hathaway, Apple. These are all of the other organizations that we have put in the sales hierarchy with Chevron. Okay, so this graph view is a really flexible way for you to see relationships that might be harder for you to explore in that traditional table format. Okay, so let's take a look at a critical component of managing some of those matches and merges that I had mentioned earlier. Okay, so what I'm saying is, you know, you will create rules that do matching and merging and deduplicate and consolidate your data, but it's the data steward's job to keep an eye on those rules and make sure that the XDM is doing the right thing. And there's always going to be exception cases that we want to handle on a manual basis. And so we're going to take a look and see what are the kinds of capabilities that a human has to help with maintaining some of this data in an ongoing basis. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to enter this review suggestions view, and we'll take a look at what that means. Okay, so let's check these records out. And let's review suggestions. And again, this is something that a data steward would typically be doing. So what we're seeing here is we've got 3 layers. And let me explain to you what we're dealing with. So let's take a look at this bottom layer first. This bottom layer with all of these colorful tiles, they're telling us the source system provided this record. And we know that it's the source system because we can see the ID from the source system. In this case, FIN stands for finance. And in this case, CRM stands for the CRM, and then support could stand for, a support system, and you can substitute any system for that. It could be the ERP, could be marketing automation. And we're seeing here that ID from the source system and some information. So what's happened here is that these records have matched and merged with each other to create these 2 golden records, right? And so these 2 golden records give us a view of the status quo, meaning that we would be able to consume these golden records downstream. What's different about this review suggestions is that up top here, we have this tile. This is the suggestion. It's kind of the what if scenario that XDM thinks we should adopt. It's saying that based on your matching rules, I've identified that there's a relationship between these source system records, and right now you've got these 2 golden, but I think that they should actually be this one suggestion, this one ultimate golden record. So we can see the relationship here if we take a look at this matches and transitive matches toggle here. So I can actually now turn this on and see what is the relationship between these source system records, right? And so these lines are telling us that there's some matching happening here. If I click on this line here, I can actually see what the match rule is. Here I've got a match rule scored at 88. I've got here some documentation about this match rule, and then I've got the actual definition of the match rule. And what you can notice immediately is that there are a lot of different match rules here that have triggered, like this one is matching based on the same website, whereas this one previously was matching because these 2 source records have the same phonetic name. We've got here these different match rules, again, based on website, and here it's matching based on fuzzy name and address. Okay, so the tool is saying, I've identified these matches here, but the confidence score is a little bit low. We're only dealing with a confidence score of 58. And I'm not super sure that I want to go ahead and merge them together. So will a data steward please take the time to review this? Okay, so as a data steward, what I can do is I can just quickly look at this information here and just browse this and make a judgment call, or I could actually click on the suggestion and get more information. For example, we could look at here and see, okay, these are all of the records from the source system. Again, we know that because we've got the identifier from the source system and the ID. And then we can actually see here what are all of the different values and make a judgment call. So we can see we've got 2 organizations. One's called BNSF, stands for Burlington Northern Santa Fe, and the other one is SFP Pipelines. So you would think at first they're not the same organization, but when you dig in further, you can see that SFP Pipelines here is located at this address in Fort Worth. And then you can see this other organization is located in a building right next to it, also in Fort Worth. And ultimately, they've got the same website here, bnsf.com. Okay. Upon further investigation, we discover, they're both companies held by Berkshire Hathaway. And so, yeah, at some point, probably one of them acquired the other. And so they are the same organization, even if they have different names. So in this case, as a data steward, what I could do is I can go ahead and just accept the suggestion and say, yes, I want to follow the tool's advice and take that suggestion and go with it as my new golden record. Of course, I could also reject the suggestion and end up with two separate golden records, which are what we have currently in the status quo. Okay, so that kind of gives you an idea of the manual actions that a data steward can do to review and either accept, reject, or even override some of the values that the tool will provide. Okay, and you can even modify. So if, for example, we decide we do want to go with that golden that would go with the suggestion, so now it's the golden record, we can also have this user interface where we can actually say, yeah, I would prefer to, I want to accept the suggestion, but I would prefer the company name be Burlington Northern Santa Fe instead of SFP Pipelines. And so we can take that, click apply, and then it will have updated once we hit submit. Okay, so that kind of gives you
Evil moderator, how are you doing on time?
Based on my timer, it looks like I'm at 17 minutes, so I got 3 more minutes.
We have a question. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Do you have a question?
There is one question, Anna.
Go for it.
It came from Rama. She's asking if you could go over the algorithms that are baked in for the matching records. Is there a way to see the underlying?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, so as part of our application builder, we have a number of different algorithms ready to use out of the box. And those are a lot of the well-known string algorithms, string comparison algorithms. So we're talking like Levenstein, N-grams, Dice coefficient, and then we've got a couple that Semarchy's rolled together that's based off of some of these. So for example, we have something called the sum edit distance, and then even the sum edit distance similarity. And so it, without getting too much into the weeds, it is doing that comparison, taking into account the length of the string. So for example, if I have 1 or 2 different characters, if the string is really long, maybe we could just consider that to be a typo, in which case it's weighted less. But if the string is only 4 characters long, then 1 or 2 differences is actually going to be a huge fundamental difference, right? It could be the difference between my name, Anna, and like the name Adam, for example. And so in that case, we're going to say that that might not be a match. So there's that level of complexity. If you are interested, you're welcome to shoot me an email and we can talk more about all the different algorithms that we have out of the box. We also work with a lot of partners, and those system integrators will roll their own custom algorithms as well. And some of those could be based on, whatever kind of complicated logic that you have, matching things like relationships and like, is it a married couple, is it not, and things like that. I hope that
Great.
answers the question. And if it doesn't, feel free to send a follow-up.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Great. All right. So I know I only have 1 minute left, so I'm going to just quickly jump over to products and show you this concept of that intelligent data hub, which is not only can we manage customer and party and location data in one place, we can also do product information. Sorry, I think I said what I meant was we can do parties and location, and in addition I'm going to show you products, right, all in one place. So in this case we have, let's say a retail company that sells clothing items, and so we can see that we've got a completely different view. Instead of that 1 column view, now we've got a 2 column view where we've got this big central product catalog with a image of these products. We're able to see some brand information. We can even see charts here that we can embed that show you, potential purchase history. We can also have this product translated into multiple languages, right? So talking about that kind of third-party integration of data, like I was showing you earlier with location, I can also have the tool translate this product information in English into a different language, in this case, Spanish, right? In real time. And so we're connecting essentially to Google Translate and telling Google Translate to please give me, the product information translated into another language, and there's the Spanish version, okay? We can also have different items and all the different variants, like the product sizes and colors. And then linking back now to the parties I showed you earlier, we can see these products, what companies sell them. And when I click on Zara, we'll actually have the parallel view to Chevron that we had earlier, except this is now for that clothing retailer, Zara, where we can see here, here's the information about Zara, here's the location information, it's headquartered in Spain, so on. And then, here are some of the sellable products. So that's kind of how you can see all of these domains interacting with each other. All right, my time's up. Are there any other questions for me, or is there anything else you want to see?
There's
Yeah,
one
ahead.
question. Merge records, can I unmerge?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay,
So let me
cool.
show you what that looks like. If I have, let's say, going back to Chevron again, what we can do is take this merge or split option here, and then we can say, yeah, let's take this chevrons ticket and make it a new golden. Drop it, let it go. Oops. Let's try to split these. Or let me try to add in another company here. We can say add in AT&T, finish, and then start to, have a kind of Frankenstein scenario where I can take some of Chevron, split that in here, add it into AT&T, like so, and so on, right? Now we've got two chevrons. If you decided you wanted to start playing around it and shifting these things around.
Awesome.
Yes, thank you very much for that question. Let me know if there's anything else.
Thank you, Anna.
Always. You always do the best demos, I swear.
Mhm.
Thanks so much.
All right. So, Anna,
Right.
the advice.
Is that any better?
Yeah, it's perfect.
All right, sorry about that. All right, so.
I'm sorry, Anna. I just wanted to make sure you were there. I'm gonna let Joe cover his thing, and we're gonna get back to you before I wrap, okay?
Okay, no problem.
Thank you. Joe.
Drum roll for Joe.
Hello again. All right. So before I talk about kind of our experience, just want to make sure I give a little context, because data without context is not information, right? And so AAIS is a not-for-profit insurance advisory company. What we do is we sit in the property casualty space and interface between carriers and regulators. That's one function, but what the function I'll talk about today is our primary revenue source, which is producing product for the industry. And so our not-for-profitness also comes in the expression of we pool data from hundreds of different carriers, and then use that data, and that's policy information and claims. And then we use that data to produce products. So these are like your homeowner's policy. Like if you were to look at the hundreds of pages that you get with your homeowner's policy, you probably see either one of two names on there, either ISO or AAIS. And so our two organizations are the largest in PNC for developing these products, and companies from the smallest to the largest use them because, for one, that's what the regulators kind of oversee, but also it helps keep everything kind of fair and balanced across the industry. So, Left-Handed Lutherans Mutual out in Iowa has the same amount of experience behind their products that Travelers does in Hartford, Connecticut. And so to be able to do this, we've traditionally just pulled in that same, legacy style policy and claim information. When I joined the organization about 8 years ago, started utilizing newer technologies. We built the data lake. Our actuaries started going away from SaaS and their old processes, and it worked, and we could still turn the crank and produce product and produce revisions and do refilings every year. But what we couldn't do was really mature those products and innovate on them without, with the small staff that we have, without using some technical leverage. And so we have a data catalog here. I might ask you to go to the next slide first, and then we'll go back to this one, because this is kind of the story of our maturity curve was, all right, we have all this existing legacy product, but they're all buried in documents like PDFs and Word documents and all this that companies would take, and they would have to go through these very long integration cycles of developers reading these documents, unpacking all the requirements, getting all the loss costs and factors and calculation details out of those documents, and getting it wrong over and over again. So it's very hard for a company to adopt, so if they're locked in, or if they're, currently using an ISO product, it's almost like vendor lock-in because of the expense of migrating to a new one. So we looked at it and said, well, we know this is all data at the end of the day. And so how do we centralize that information, get them out of the documents? Maybe it does take, quite a bit of effort, but we're doing it one time, and we don't ask our carriers to do it every single time they do an adoption. And so we looked around, and that's where we found Semarchy, is because, as Anna was describing, the ability to flexibly create reference data structures really worked for our use case. And so we're able to create these this platform. We call it PDP, our product delivery platform, that we've been over the past few years loading with all of our different products. And as we're developing new products, none of them go back into those documents before they go into our Semarchy-based solution for our reference data management. So we have a nice, curated place where all this reference data lives today. And so when the Hartford comes knock on our door and says, we'd like to leave ISO, we think your products are better for these reasons, whatever, what we can do now is say, okay, well, are you using Guidewire, are you using Duck Creek? We know what those systems are expecting as far as their integration data. And we already have that ETL built that can take it out of Semarchy in the format that we know and love. In AIS is not necessarily what's going to work for those systems. So we have that ETL sitting kind of on the shelf, ready to go. We hit go. There's always a lot of details and what exactly they're looking for and how they've configured their systems. But we can much more rapidly deploy that data and those integrations to those systems for our customers, saving them. And in cases, most cases, it's millions of dollars and years of integration time. So that's all good. We have context of our data. We actually have our products digitized. We have a way to deliver that. And then we'll go back to the previous slide. What we're now missing is the fact that our products we're not spending that time on that. Now we're spending time on innovating. And so it's typically when you got that homeowner's policy, one of the key levers that's going to change your rate is what's called public fire protection class. And so if you go through ISO's methodology, it's basically how many toys does your closest fire department have? It's imperfect science. It's not really predictive. Everybody knows it, but it's what the industry uses. AIS for the longest time said, well, how close are you to a fire hydrant? And we've all heard stories of insurance agents going out there with a cardboard cutout fire hydrant and put it next to a house, taking a photo, and then you get the best rate you can, right? And so none of those really work, and the industry is looking for something new. So we decided we're going to take a different approach, and we partnered with the NFPA, National Fire Protection Association, and a few other people, mostly data providers, that could give us, real incident data. What's been going on? It's not just the claims, because the claims only tell you part of the story. It's a retrospective look. It says, okay, how much damage was caused, but you don't really know what went into it, what mitigation factors were in play, how the performance of the fire department actually impacted the size of that claim, and all the other components that go into the exposure. And so we started gathering all this data, and none of it's really perfect. We're looking at a countrywide program, and so these companies that are doing satellite imagery analysis to get certain information about the roof and all that, they have a really good picture of what's going on in Chicago, but maybe they have this big blind spot in Nebraska. And so we have to understand, where all this data is of good quality, where it's sparse, all those other things. And again, small staff, we really don't have the ability to, colloquially share this information and this knowledge at the speed that we need to produce that product. And so that's where the catalog conversation came in, is, okay, instead of just the traditional policy and claim information, how do we start curating information around, the metadata around all these new data sources that we're getting? We're just taking everything we can get, because we're building this new model and doing a lot of new analytics that is, to actuaries a little bit scary, because at the end of the day, we've got to go back to the regulators and say, here's how we prove our work, right? And so that's where the data catalog came in. And the last slide that we have here is basically going back to similar to, I think it was the Semarchy slide around governing the reference data, we really don't have data governance until we put all three of these things together. We can't just let our data stand on an island. We can't just have reference data that doesn't, get us to the new innovations. And then the catalog really glues everything together for us. And so we start to really curate that information. We are building products, but our products are more defensible. We have credibility, and we have things that are really easy to talk to the regulators about. Because I'll tell you, 3 years ago, I had to explain during our last NEIC audit, I had to explain to the auditors what a data lake was, and that is 2 months of my life I really want back. So, and those are my prepared remarks, Mike.
Thank you very much. I'm familiar with the product that you guys built, and phenomenal story.
It's been a lot of fun.
Yep. All right.
Client, Joe, with both of our preferred tools. So
Yep. Cool. All right, Anna.
All right, let's make this quick. All right, so these are what you don't do when you're trying to do your master data management. Our project, we exercised as a project, was to deliver the Big Bang master data for over 200 plus fields. We failed miserably. It took a long time, and the results were dodgy at best. Business users were not happy. We lost tons of confidence in the data. And we were like 18 months into this when we started really recognizing it was not going to succeed. We regrouped, kind of did it a second time, and we started more in an agile approach, focusing on critical data elements. And instead of a project, we kind of managed it more as, let's just do this as part of every release, every 2 to 3 weeks. And it wasn't easy. We didn't get huge buy-in initially from the business, but as we started showing delivery, they were happy with that delivery. We got more people involved, and the business ended up owning what you delivered, when you delivered, and how you delivered. And it was a much easier approach. We were able to do it faster. It took us a little while to recover from reputational that we lost with the first go round, but it turned out to be a much better approach. So I think it's just one of those, don't do it like I did it and the approach won, and really do it the second way. I think this also helped us in the chaos that somebody had asked about earlier. This did kind of help us get some of that chaos in control, because we weren't trying to do the big delivery at one time. We were doing small, specific delivery for each iteration. And I think that was just a better approach for us at the end of the day.
That's awesome. Yeah, that was similar to the experience we had at Honeywell once we turned the corner. So a couple of keynotes, getting down the road, just get 100% commitment from the entire enterprise that everyone owns governance and quality and mastering. It's not limited to certain parts of the organization. Here's a capture of published data ethics principles. You'll get that as almost like a key resource. Just adopt these and then act accordingly to them. And then Anna, help me with Will Robertson.
warning,
So,
warning, Robinson, warning.
warning, yeah. So all this is really trying to say is that governance and MDM is not just you implement it and you walk away. It's something that you do long term. It's something that you keep focus on, and it is just what you do. It's just part of, it's table stakes at this point.
Great, thank you. So, some questions to ask yourself as you're getting ready to see how ready you are to get down the road on getting better throughput and value generation from your governance programs and master data management programs and whatnot, and or do you have the right enabling platforms, right? And as you leave, just remember that taking that kind of lean, agile, minimum viable product approach to just chip away, creating value as quickly as possible over and over and over again. Right? And what do we got? No, we have
1 minute left.
1 minute for a question.
And also note, if you have questions, I put info at Great Data Minds in the chat. So feel free to send us any questions you may have, or if you want to dive deeper into the technologies that we presented today. I know that both Anna and Chan would welcome that opportunity. Be sure to check over in the events page on Great Data Minds. We have some good stuff coming up. We have a data ops, data therapy session coming up. So bring us your hardest issues that you're having and let us tell you how data ops might be able to solve it.
Yep.
We also have More Attractive with Data Catalog with Bonnie O'Neill, who wrote Sleuthing with Data Catalogs or something. I don't have it in front of me, but she's going to be hosting our More Attractive with Data Catalog. So join us there, and we will be announcing, I think, 2 more events here in the next week or so. So we've got good stuff happening until the end of the year. We really, really, any comment, Brandon, had one more question.
I'm gonna offer up. I'll get the responses to the questions we couldn't get to and send them out to everybody. Okay.
Yeah, but if we can hang on, I don't know. Do you have a dead stop, Mike?
No.
Okay, because Brandon didn't have one question. Any content of DNA strategy?
Brandon, what does DNA stand for, please? Data and analytics. Yes, you'll see it. That strategy comes out really across all 5 of our pillars, Brandon. Would love to chat with you because there's the program execution strategy. There's strategy around implementing some of these hard programs that have been monolithic forever, which we shared a great deal today. The self-service strategy, data ops automation, and machine learning ops automation strategy, et cetera. So absolutely, we will make sure we follow up and connect with you, sir. Thank you for that question.
Thanks. And thanks everyone for joining us today. We'll be sending out the recording and the slides and use them for reference, and we'll have those in your box in 24 hours. Thanks all of you panelists. You were great.
Yeah, thank you guys. And our sponsors, you guys rock, right?
Thank
Joe,
you.
Anna, Jan.
Yep.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye, everyone.